Hello and welcome to Champ Select, your go-to competitive Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Alex, as per usual. Joining me are my two co-hosts, Noble.
Hello.
And Hugh.
Hello.
And we've gotten a little over a week of time to play on this new patch, and I think it's time that we take a real deep look at Azir Irelia. Deck has been everywhere on the ladder. I know that it's getting a lot of attention, basically. Good and bad from a lot of people. And if you've been playing the game the last week, you've probably seen it a lot. You've probably played it against it a lot. Odds are you've even played with it. But I know we've all played a lot with and against the deck in the last little bit, and I think we've got some tips and tricks playing with it, against it, how to build it, what the deck does well, what it does poorly, things you can try to beat it with. We got a lot to say about this deck, really. It's a really interesting deck.
Really cool deck.
And it's really taking over the meta. So,
Oh, sorry. That was I just saw out of the corner of my eye that tier list we made. It's just spooky.
Yeah,
we got really wrong. When we made that tier list and when we were looking at it, we basically said, like, there is one deck here, either MF or Azir, and if that deck's good, these cards are good, and if that deck isn't, it isn't. And I think we just kind of underestimated how good that deck would be. By a fair margin.
Most definitely. Yeah. For those of you who are wondering, we did a live tier list. Let's see, last week.
Like closing time,
pretty much about a week ago.
Stream,
with closing time on stream. I'll put a link to the VOD to that. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can. It'll be in the description wherever you listen to this. So we were solidly wrong about how good this deck would be before it came out. Pretty much, I think. I don't know. I guess I don't want to speak for you guys, but for me, the first game I played with the deck, I was like, we messed up. All it took was one game. One game and me being like, this is busted.
So here's the thing. Like, my first thought was like, how do these decks beat Thresh Nassus? How do they beat TLC? And I actually think that we were correct in that the MF version really struggles against
really
TLC.
Bad. Yeah.
It's not good against TLC.
Which I think is one of the biggest reasons. Well, I also think it has a lot of inconsistency issues. But I think it's just worse for a lot of reasons. But at least we were generally correct about that.
Yeah. And then the Azir one just ends up being so resilient. It does all of the things that Sandscouse was doing, but way better. You're
much faster.
Yeah. Your rallies are not dead cards on empty boards and also put units onto the stack immediately. They're not slow spells, so they're not counterable. And by this, of course, I mean Blade Dances, where you're like getting all these extra triggers from your Empress Dices and your Azirs. I guess maybe we should go right into it. What makes the deck good? So we're talking about Azir Irelia, the Ionia Shurima deck, which is not something that we thought would be saying is the deck next.
You brought up yesterday, we were like driving in the car and you were like, you know what's wild? Ionia Shurima is like the best deck in the format.
It's like bannable. Yeah.
Boom. Weird. I hadn't thought about that. We're really all eating our shoes, eating our hats on this one, I think.
Absolutely.
Like, it's crazy how good this deck is. I guess they were really this close. Like, regardless, so
I mean, like every Ionia card the deck plays is new.
I guess that is fair.
Like,
is it all
every
of them?
single one?
So speaking of, we should tell you the deck list.
Yeah, so I guess let's start with the deck list.
Yeah. So we have 9 1-drops, 3 Dancing Droplet, 3 Dune Keeper, and 3 Sparring Student. This card isn't new, has been around since beta. Very, very good.
Yeah, it's absurd in this deck. I'm almost want to say the best card in the deck. Like, so it feels like the most explosive card in the deck. It's not the best card in the deck, but it really feels unbeatable a lot of the time if you can't deal with it.
Yeah. And then rounding out our non-champion payoffs in the 2-drop slot, we have 3 Emperor's Dias and 3 Greenglade Duo. So both of these, so there's the Greenglade Duo Sparring Student thing that happens whenever you summon units. It's +1/+0 and +1/+1 respectively. And then there's the Emperor's Dias Azir part where every time you're attacking with your blades, you're summoning more units. You're making additional Sandcoder, which counts additional attack for Irelia level up, counts as an additional summon for Azir and for Sparring Student and Greenglade Duo.
Yeah. And it's about this time that I want to jump in and say, not every version of this deck is playing Greenglade Duo. Not every version of the deck is playing Dune Keeper. But, I mean, we played a lot of Azir Irelia. We played a bit on stream. We had a whole stream where we spent like 4 hours and we were like, we're just going to play all these Azir Irelia lists and see which ones feel the best and why. And we've played a lot of them. And I think that I'm just going to pretty solidly say that I'm quite confident that the best version of this deck plays 3 copies of Greenglade Duo, 3 copies of Sparring Student, 3 Dune Keeper, the full 6 retreat package. This was a list that are...
This list was found on Austin Yo's Twitter. He's a consistent Masters player.
Really good.
Member of our Discord, always has great lists.
Yeah. To be honest, like I've said this before, but there's almost no one I trust to tune an aggro list more in almost the entire world than Austin Yost. He just comes.
We're just like
he just comes with the best list almost every time. He's particularly good at aggro, I think.
Yeah.
I've disagreed with a couple choices in the like mid ranger control-y things, but like his aggro decks are just always flawless. I think like pretty much.
So 9 1-drops, those 6 2-drops. There is the 3 retreat, which is the one that bounces a follower to your hand and then gives you the thing that lets you play a follower, and then 3 of the new card lead and follow that bounces a follower or bounces a unit. I said follower because it has follow in its name, and then creates that spell Irelia creates that Blade Dance 2s for 1 as a
flawless
spell.
Flawless
duet. Then there is also 2 copies of Syncopation. This is kind of where I've liked to settle. Don't love the third and want to have more than one. I think more than 1 or 0. Then 3 Azir, 3 Irelia, 3 Ribbon Dancer as the blade in our Blade Dance card. Sorry, that's a 2-drop. I kind of went back, but it's because it's in the different part in my mind. 3 Ribbon Dancer, 3 Blossoming Blade as our Blade Dance payoffs. 3 Inspiring Marshal, rounding out the kind of like summon attack 1/1 package, and 2 Homecoming, rounding out the interaction.
Yeah, by the way, real quick, when we say bounce, that just means to return something to hand.
Recall. That's an old habit. So I really like this version of the deck. So for starters, I think people were on something very close to this list pretty early on. Like the first list I saw had like some Merciless Hunters or whatever. Those got cut pretty quick for sparring students. Yeah. Then the Green Glade duo thing happened pretty quick after the sparring student thing because turns out that effect is really good in the deck. And it was kind of hard to envision that before you played it, right?
I've killed people on like turn 3 through interaction.
It's
like
sometimes
turn 3, 4.
Yeah, sometimes it's ridiculous. Like turn 4 is pretty killable.
Like I did sparring student into duo Dunekeeper.
Yeah, and it's just like
it's
lethal.
That's just
it's so much damage. And
it's like 9 power from elusives and like a giant sparring student and another like 3 attackers coming in. It's absolutely nonsense.
And people like saw that version were like, here's the thought process, I think, is, hey guys, the best cards in our deck are our champions, which I agree with. They are. So we'll just play, like, we'll bring it down a little bit. We'll play some pump spells, and then we're going to get to play, like, Ancient Prep and some Shaped Stones to try and win combat.
Hack them, yeah.
Yeah, and there was, like, some Preservariums floating around I saw at various spots. Like, some
to draw towards the champions.
Yeah, some Navori Conspirators to pair with the Dancing Droplet.
To once again keep digging through your deck.
Yeah, and all that stuff makes sense to me in theory, but I really think that list just, like, somebody looked at the deck and was like, all right, great, I'm going to add a lot of consistency. But in doing that, they took out a lot of the power, I think. And really, I think that the power is like the ability to not draw your opponent and just kill them is incredibly important in this deck. And that's really something that I want to focus on, is because I'm kind of getting a like a little bit of a hint of the like TF Fizz thing here, where it's like sometimes I'm going to queue into an awful matchup with people that have a million tech cards for me, and guess what? It doesn't matter because you can't beat my best hand, right? Yeah. Like if I go student into Dais, into Azir, into Ford, like Dancing Blossoming Blade or whatever, like most people can't beat that, and no matter how tech they are for it, or student duo Dunekeeper, right? Stuff like that, almost anything like that. If you're just curving out with this deck. In
the real one is like student attack on 2 student Dunekeeper, and you're just attacking for like 11.
Yeah.
And then like, oh no, my creatures get avalanche next turn.
Whatever, yeah.
You're going to play an Azir and then you're going to die.
Yeah, who cares?
Because a crucial thing that this deck does is it makes all of these blade dances and trump attacks, like the random units that you're creating, huge with like Inspiring Marshal or Azir, and puts enough pressure on your opponent that they have to trade real creatures for them. And since the damage is permanent, because that's how the game works, it just slowly chips down at all their creatures. Like a 2/2 only gets to block 2 of them, and then your guys are trading for real cards.
Yeah, so it's like, and that always usually happens like on the early turns of the game, and by the time you get to the mid turns of the game, they'll usually have a flipped Azir or an Inspiring Marshal, a flipped Irelia, anything like that. Yeah. And now your boys just can't block profitably at all, and that's when it really starts to get bad for you.
Yeah, and you would think that this deck would have a bad matchup against decks like Overwhelm, because like big units, vulnerable. They can kill your champions, like stuff like Rune Raider. Is that Rune Runner is the big one you'd think would kill them. And then like the 2-drop that has a 3/1 overwhelm with tough, that card is really good at blocking
Ruthless
blades.
Raider. That card's quite good.
But whenever I play against them, their deck's just so clunky.
Yeah.
And this deck is putting so much pressure on, so mana efficient. Like you're playing like a 2-mana 2/1 with like mana for a recall up that's like putting 6 power into play attacking your opponent. And then like you still have the attack token with an elusive like 6/6. Like, and all of this was like for like 6 mana spread out over like 5 turns or something.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. So how about you, Hugh? Where are you at on this deck? Because I don't know, it feels so powerful a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you.
Sorry, I was looking at the deck list and I just accidentally hit the unmute on my phone and just started playing the alarm.
Yeah, so basically, like you said, the best draws are just kind of unbeatable. I've toyed around with like, the meta has basically turned into, from my experience, like, I don't know, 75% Azir Irelia, and the rest is just
so much of it
random garbage teched to beat it. With a scattering of like actual decks.
Yeah.
Most notably like the Shiv Aesol and the Zoe Fi.
Threshnasus.
Yeah, Threshnasus still is kicking around.
TLC is just completely gone.
Yep. No,
absolutely non-existent.
Which I'm fine with, but like, yeah. At what cost? I don't know. Like,
at what cost?
And then like you're just playing this deck over and over again, and like I'm just like 50-50 with it personally. I know some people just have ludicrous win rates with it, and I'm obviously playing parts of it wrong. I know this I know this.
The deck is really hard.
It's incredibly difficult.
So hard.
Every game I play, particularly the mirror. The mirror is so unbelievably hard.
It's so hard.
There's so many times in those games where I'm like, aha, I'm gonna beat them now, and then I like get them to 2. And then I'm like, oh, well, now I lose.
Yep. That's really how it goes. You have to do a lot of math in advance with that deck because like
ridiculous. Yeah.
You need to decide like whether or not you can apply enough pressure to like make them block to deal with their creatures, or if you're going to have to deploy creatures to be able to block to live another turn, right? Like there's a lot of that math. That's the most consistent like skill check I've found.
If they don't have to block, then they kill you.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
Once you blow your hand trying to kill them and fail.
This deck's plan
this deck doesn't have a lot of blockers.
This deck's plan really relies on the best defense is a good offense theory, where it's like you're gonna have to block before I will, and it's like a game of chicken. And so like it feels like it can have a kind of bad matchup against the decks that are gonna win that game of chicken, like particularly like Spiders,
particularly
Azir, Burn,
and maybe Irelia,
right?
Maybe
like
Overwhelm,
yeah, maybe Overwhelm. But it feels like Overwhelm's too slow, to be honest. But like, it has to be really fast because this is a synergy deck at the end of the day, right? It's not just playing Legion Rearguard, right? And just trying to attack for as much as possible. It's trying to assemble some synergies and then kill you with them. It just does it faster than the other decks are assembling synergies and killing you with them. Just not quite as fast as the decks that are just killing you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, in particular, the card Legion Rearguard, I was like, nice, they can't block. And I was like, they're taking 1 and I'm taking 3.
Yeah, it's just not where you like. I like Game and Watch. No, I was like, I feel like any deck that's playing Legion Rearguard is probably going to have some game against our deck. Like,
absolutely. And like, I had this nutty game playing Threshnasus against this deck, the only game I've lost, where my opponent just had like 2 dancing droplets, and they spent my attack token and my blade dance, like literally casting recalls on droplets, and I was like, this is not how you win this game, opponent. Like, no. And then like I just like died because they exacted me with Shapestone because I didn't block quite right.
I actually think that recalling droplet is probably a good plan to win a Threshnasus matchup, because like
that they just had no other board. Like, they didn't even have a dais. So
yeah,
I
mean, their draw must have been pretty bad to begin with, but that plan I don't think is actually that bad against that deck.
Yeah,
but they can also just sort of wait and bide their time a little bit, and then they can vomit out like. They can, because on like turn like if on 6 or something, they can set up a turn where they're swinging like 4 times in a single turn with like 8
if they played like Inspiring
each
Marshal the last turn or something, like it's really
exactly
bad.
Like they can set their pieces up in a way that makes it so like they get to press the win button when they want to.
My the classic for me is having Azir, like having Irelia in play, making the blade at the start of the turn, playing the Marshal.
Yeah, it's always lethal.
And then like doing that, like if you, for example, if you have full mountain stone on turn 6, her blade dance, and then if you play the recall that makes a blade dance, that's just like a ridiculous amount of power.
Yeah, it's absurd. So the deck, I was gonna say, so Hugh, you said that you've just like been chilling with like 50% win rate, and I actually like kind of same, which is I feel this is the first time that I think I've ever played a deck and been like, I think this deck is busted, and then had like a 50% win rate over like 30 games, like, and it feels weird because it's like I think my deck is busted because I'm just like, it's like every matchup I'm playing into the mirror or something that's supposed to beat me, and I'm just like 50%. And it's like, well, this makes sense, right? I'm playing the mirror; those should theoretically be 50%. Like I think I'm playing the best version for the mirror, so like maybe I'm gaining some points here and there. And then it's like all these decks that are trying to beat you feel like you're just still like 45 or like 50% against it for a lot of the part, because you just can't beat the best draws. Like,
I think that there's even the decks that are built to beat this deck are honestly probably like have a negative win rate.
I wouldn't be shocked,
because the decks that are built to beat this deck are usually built in such a way that like they're not actually like very good decks.
Yeah,
they just are playing like a bunch of like, they're playing like three ice shards and 3 death lotuses. Like,
yeah, like these, I keep queuing into these like Vladimir Braum, like, or Vladimir Sejuani, like Scargrounds decks with like Death Lotus and Ice Shard and Scargrounds. And every time I'm like, I think it's just like so good, because their deck is just so clunky, and their plan is to play like one big thing a turn. I don't care if you block my one blade 3 times with the same creature. Go for it. Like, you're going to take 15 in the meantime, you know?
On the other hand, I have an 85% win rate on the deck.
Yeah, see, and then there's this, where I have not talked to a single person who's like, yeah, I'm like 10. I have like a 20% win rate with the deck. Like, I think it's bad. Nobody thinks that. The worst I've heard anyone say is that they're like 50% with it. And then there's like, it feels like if you ask like let's take a random selection of 100 good players, right? Like 100 Masters players. It's like 70% of them are like, I'm like 55% with the deck, and then like 30% of them are like, I'm like 85% with the deck,
yeah,
or something. And like, I don't really know what the difference is. Maybe I suck. Like, maybe I'm just playing the deck really bad.
I can believe that.
Yeah, which I don't think would be all that unreasonable. Like, I'm sure I'm playing it worse than the players who have a higher win rate. I must be, but like,
I have a theory for this, and I think that what's happening is, I'm really curious. Something I want to know. I want someone to hopefully figure this out. Maybe we can get Adam to do it or something. Like,
yeah,
there's people we can talk to maybe figure this out with just data.
If anybody listening to this has the ability to do whatever he is about to suggest,
yeah,
let us know.
So what I want to know is, in the mirror specifically, I only really care about the mirror because it's really the only matchup in this entire metagame that matters anymore. That's not an exaggeration either, I don't think.
My win rate is not counting the mirror, because I've played like 35 non-mirror games on the deck and like 12 mirror games on the deck, so the mirror really skews my win rate down because it's 50% in the mirror.
That's
so like
all the mirror games you've played?
12 out of the 30 something.
That sounds about right. It's probably about where I'm at.
Like over a third, yeah.
It's like over a third, which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but like,
it is ridiculous. I thought
it's over a fourth.
It's felt like
35 non.
Oh yeah.
It's felt like at least 50 for me. It's felt like about 50%.
That seems pretty. I mean, both of those seem like they'd be totally within a reasonable sample size.
Back to what I was about to say. What I want to know, and what I want someone to figure out, is what the win rate is in the mirror for the person who gets the attack token first versus second.
I wanted to know this too.
And this is exactly, because I think this is what matters the most in the matchup, or at least this is what it feels like matters the most in the matchup, is the person who has the attack token either first or second, one of those loses.
Even attack tokens are much better.
Yes, that's what I felt too.
Yeah, I think. Which seems kind of odd, because you would think that. Okay, so here's really the thing, is that this deck wants to have setup turn, payoff turn, setup turn, payoff turn, setup turn, payoff turn. And if your setup turn is the attack token turn, then you're going to be attacking for 1 with Sparring Student. And then like on my turn, I'm going to be attacking for 5 with my sparring student plus a Dune Keeper and a Droplet or whatever, right? Or even more, right? Like, and then it's like, okay, on your, you play Emperor's Dais, on your turn you play Irelia and don't have mana to play the Flawless Duet, right? Like that's a big one too. And
the mana,
and Azir blocks better than he attacks. So like, there's a lot of reasons why I think it's way better to have the even attack token as opposed to the odd one.
I want to know what the win rate like is on that, because it feels like a coin flip. It feels like the weirdest part about the mirror is that it's an actual coin flip.
So
and because that's exactly it. There's setup turn, payoff turn, and like the mana lines up so perfectly for you to just do so little when you have the attack token first.
Yeah, it feels hard. It feels harder for sure. Because like, you want to play Inspiring Marshal on the turn, you don't have the attack token. And then all your dudes on the turn you do, right? Like there's just like 3 things why it feels bad.
I've been over here. I totally agree with everything you've been saying. I've been over here looking for some data that I found, some early win rate data that I thought we might want to look at. There is Shurima is the most played region, then Shadow Isles, then Piltover's on Noxus, and then after that Ionia, 12.5%.
That makes sense.
The least played region is Bilgewater at 2%.
That sounds correct.
Demacia has like 7.5.
I queued into a Unicorn today, played against some Deep, so that was fun.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a bold man.
That's a relic.
And the worst part about it was that like I had just like started playing some Thresh Nasus because I was like, I want to see how it does in this environment, right? I'd been playing mostly Azir Irelia. I played like, I don't know, 5 or maybe more games of Thresh Nasus earlier today just to see what was up. And then I queued into Azir Irelia, and then Deep twice. And I was like,
wild,
back to back too. And they were different people. And I was like, why did I was like, man, I crushed those people. Time to get back onto Azir Irelia. And then the Deep decks couldn't even beat Thresh Nasus. So I was like, man, these people really should not be playing this deck. Like,
so speaking of, the play rates are 15.86% play rate for Azir Irelia. This is aggregate over Americas, Asia, and Europe. 13.89 for Thresh Nasus, 10.4 for Draven Ezreal, 5.6 for Draven Jinx, discard aggro, then 9% for Lissandra Trundle. I haven't played against that deck a single time.
I've seen it once since the patch dropped.
Then like 3.6 for Azul Shyvana, 3.14, that's pi, for Renekton Sejuani, and then like Azir Chariot, like 3.06, and then Aurelion Soul Zoe, and then Aurelion Soul Shyvana Zoe. Oh, so if you aggregate Azul Shyvana, Azul Zoe, and Azul Shyvana Zoe, it's a lot closer to
probably like 10%.
Yeah, it's like 10%. So there's Azir Irelia, Nasus Thresh, Draven Ezreal, and Azul decks, Azul Demacia decks that are all like around 10% or 10% of the metagame. So like a solid almost 50% of the metagame is these 4 decks.
Is that Platinum Plus or is that all? Because I'm curious, because I do feel like Platinum Plus is more than 15% Azir Irelia. Oh, that's some anecdotal evidence for sure.
It certainly feels like it.
I think it's all games. It sounds like
that sounds correct.
So here, let me read you the matchup. Let me read up the matchup.
I bet that this gets even more skewed in the higher it goes. So like I bet that at the very top, like there's some people playing stuff that isn't Azir Irelia, like at the top of Masters or whatever, and like in Masters mostly. So, but I bet that like Platinum and Diamond is like I would probably guess that it's at least 20% Azir Irelia.
So the highest win rate is actually discard aggro at 55%.
I buy that.
This is just in all. This is also in all. Like,
I wonder if that's just been true for like the entire history of the game. It kind of feels like fair. It. Like
Ash LeBlanc is next at 54%. Renekton Sejuani at 53.9. These are also like the number of wins. Like the highest number of games is like the Draven Jinx win rate is only at 1,000 games. Draven Ezreal is at 1,800. And then Thresh Nasus is at 2,400, and Azir Irelia is at 2,800. So like
way bigger sample size.
Yeah, bigger sample size for those, and they have like 52% win rates, all of them basically.
52%. Interesting. That's actually about what I was gonna say. So I was like, like the first week of the expansion, Azir Irelia had like 60% win rate or something crazy, and then people started playing the deck more and more. And then I assume this isn't counting mirrors. I would hope maybe it is counting mirrors. So the most popular decks are just naturally going to be closer to 50.
I think it is counting mirrors because that 52 sounds like where it would end up if we were counting.
Yeah, but like it feels like the latter is a bunch of decks that are trying to beat Azir
against
Irelia.
all decks.
Against all decks. So it must be counting mirrors, right?
Cases
so,
with a less than 1% play rate, games are excluded.
Cool. So I think that like basically I just think that people think that this deck you can beat this deck, and I think that you can in a tournament. Probably you can probably build a lineup that's gonna be able to deal with Azir Irelia. On ladder though, it really feels like sometimes even if you build your deck to beat it, you just get got.
Yeah.
Like it feels like you have more outs to play around stuff than you did against like Tia Fizz or stuff like that. But like, man, sometimes you just lose to this deck. And you know, that I don't know, that's been true of a few decks in the past, but usually when you build a deck to beat a deck, it feels like you're going to be able to beat it. And I just don't think that I've seen a deck that consistently beats this deck yet. Like I would be surprised if any deck that people are playing on ladder has more than a 55% against this deck.
Yeah, no, that's kind of how I felt about it. And it feels kind of the thing that has tilted me the most this past week, more than anything, is that I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a break from Azir Irelia. I'm going to try and play something else, and I'm going to build it to beat Azir Irelia. The moment
As you do, yeah.
The moment I queue up, I play like 4 games, none of them are against Azir Irelia. I'm like, screw this, and I go back to Azir Irelia. The moment I queue up with Azir Aurelia, the mirror again. I'm like, what is this, Riot?
Yeah,
Stop it.
You're just getting schooled.
Absolutely.
It's obviously
I have matchup win rates too if we want to hear them.
Yeah, fire away.
Sure.
Cool. So Azir Aurelia is 55% against Azir Shyvana, unsurprising.
That sounds about right.
48% against Azir Shyvana Zoe. I'm not sure quite what the difference is besides the
Guess
obvious.
the difference is Zoe.
And then
I wouldn't be shocked if Zoe was a 4% win rate difference in that matchup, to be honest.
And Aurelian Soul, just Azir Zoe, it's even better. It's the best against. So it's best against Azir Zoe, second best and still far above 50% against Azir Shyvana, and then the worst against, and actually a dog to Azir Shyvana Zoe, which is kind of weird.
I actually believe that. I think that data makes sense to me.
Only a 36% win rate on Azir Aurelia versus Azir Darius. Only a 30% win rate against Draven Jinx, and a 37% win rate against Nasus Thresh.
Oh, well,
but an
maybe I'm wrong.
85% win rate against Lysandra Trundle.
Okay, well, that's unsurprising.
And a little over a 50% win rate against Draven Ezreal.
Okay.
So like the counters are still just like pretty even.
Okay, so I guess actually, I think that makes sense. So here's what I was about to say, is that I think that the decks that people are trying to beat Azir Irelia with are decks like Draven and like Zoe Vi and like Zoe Ace decks. And like these decks, I just think they're way too prone to lose to just get nut drawn on, right? But I actually was about to say that I think going lower is better, because I think that the actual really good matchups are the decks like Spiders, like Burn. Like if you have Darius in your deck, you're probably favored as long as you aren't playing some Overwhelm pile, right? Like
like all the like I queue up against Scargrounds, and then they play Omen Hawk on 1, Scargrounds on 3, and then they start doing things. Yeah, and I'm like ecstatic.
That deck that is not the plan you want. Like don't come to this deck and be like, I have creatures that can block, because your creatures can't block because there's 20 creatures. Like it's ridiculous. Even if your creature's good at blocking, it's not going to be able to be that good at blocking. The only way I think to get real points against this deck is to show up and race it.
Yeah, a lot. See, because the problem is this deck is so synergy driven. When these champions are flipped, oh my god, this deck does absolute nonsense bullshit.
Yeah, if you are not going to punish them for playing Emperor's Dais on turn 2,
yeah,
and Azir on turn 3,
don't
you're
want to
lose.
It. Yeah,
you're gonna lose. Yeah. I'm not even interested. I don't care what you're doing. Like Radiant Guardians, sure, that's pretty good, but you're still gonna lose to Inspiring
And like the Scargrounds nonsense and the like random tough creatures like Radiant Guardian still just lose when the champions are flipped and there's an Inspiring Marshal in play or whatever. So your plan is to go long with a tough guy that like, but then you just like, they just like play their things naturally and like attack with some elusive guys to flip their champions.
Yeah, and I actually think it's really tricky because it feels like a lot of those games are really close. Like I totally understand why people think that these matchups are really good for these decks, because it's like, I put a Radiant Guardian into play. How can you beat it? And a lot of the time they just can't. So that makes sense, right? But like some amount of the time they can beat it, and some amount of the time they're just going to kill you before it matters. So like there's a lot of close games that you win, right, with these like Radiant Guardians or Zoe Vi and like a bunch of lifesteal things, right? Like you can win the close games against these decks. You can. But you can lose them too, and you're never gonna like. There just aren't games where you just annihilate them.
Yeah, we're gonna blow them out.
There are games where they're gonna annihilate you, and you just don't have the same luxury because your deck can't not draw that hard.
Yeah.
So that's why it feels like those matchups aren't as good as people think. But yeah, if you can outdraw them, if you can just out aggro them, and like make them block, make them take off their synergies, then the whole plan starts falling.
As soon as I have to trade my Irelia away with a turn I player, or like my 2/2 starting student because I need to block.
Yeah, you just can't place Emperor's Dais on turn 2 because you get hit for 9, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, the moment the deck needs to block, it can't block. It just can't block.
The deck can't block. Yeah,
it doesn't because its blockers all don't exist.
Yeah, it's like all Ribbon Dancer is like the best blocker in the deck.
Yeah, but all its creatures don't actually exist. It's all blades and it's all sand soldiers for the most part.
And Irelia, who only survives combat because of quick attack.
Exactly. Yeah. And Azir, who like
gets one block in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Azir will block one time, and the second time
he's your best card against aggro. He blocks once.
Yeah, and
he's your best card against every matchup.
Azir's your best card by a lot, but that's all right. So I guess like now that we've talked about matchups, I actually would love to talk about like the actual deck. So playing the deck.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the best cards. I want to go back a little bit to the mirror because I feel like that's the most important matchup, and I feel like the best card in the mirror is Sparring Student. What do you guys think about this?
I'm recently on board.
I've kind of felt like it was Green Glade Duo.
That one's good too. I would say that one if it didn't get blocked by Dancing Droplet.
Yes.
Yeah. It feels like the most important card in the mirror, like that'll going to lead to the most blowouts. But like once you're at the point where neither of you is killing the other with Green Glade Duo, then it feels like Sparring Student. But I don't think either of those cards are the most important. I just still think Azir and Irelia are the most important thing.
Yeah. I'm not gonna. I really think Sparring Student's much better than Irelia. Azir, I'll give you Azir. That one's pretty defensible. Well, Azir is insane in every. It's like your best card in almost every matchup. Sparring Student though is absurd in the mirror. I think it's the only card in your deck that can block.
I think that's fair. The best card in the deck overall is actually Irelia.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And I really think it's Irelia.
That's weird because she's the worst blade dancer. I think that is definitively true. I think that's like she just can't blade dance on your opponent's turn, which is where a lot of random damage comes from. And she has to like live if you play her on your opponent's turn. And she just doesn't get it when she enters. Like I think she's definitively the worst blade dancer.
I'm off this. I think Azir's the best card. And I think the next better than Irelia.
The next best card is maybe Emperor's Dais.
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to clarify like how important like blade dancing by itself is never going to win you a game. Like hitting your opponent with 2/1/1s because of Irelia, not going to win you a game. So especially in the mirror, I've lost games where my opponent had. I've won games where my opponent had 2 or 3 Sparring Students, and I just had an Emperor's Dais and Azir, and they didn't because I was just hammering them with 1/1s, and eventually they had to trade their like Sparring Students that were only 2/2s off. For 2/1s.
So I do want to hear about this Irelia thing. What's up with this?
The reason I think Irelia is just the best card in the deck is because she gives you all the. It feels like she gives you all the tools to win the mirror. Like she does give you the 1 mana blade dance too. Like Flawless Duet is just
very good,
so good. And the thing I have found myself losing to way more often than not is she's going to flip.
Oh yeah,
she just flips.
The champs in this deck just flip.
Yeah, like you can't stop them for like Azir flips on like turn 4
every time.
She flips closer to turn 5. Like she's a little less free.
She flips the turn after Azir flips. Basically, is just
pretty much
works.
It's usually how it lines up.
And once she flips, suddenly you need to block every creature that swings at you.
That's true.
That's the thing.
It's rough.
That's the thing that
sucks.
actually feels like it kills me every single game. Is they get to their blade surges a little bit faster than I do, and and all of a sudden like they get to pick what they kill with their Irelia because she has quick attack and she gets to choose which of my creatures she eats.
Yeah, and then when she attacks by herself, you have to block her because she can swap a Sparring Student into her spot or whatever to just like kill you. So you have to block her first.
Exactly. Basically, Irelia makes combat so awful. Like you can't. There's nothing you can play. There's no.
Have you ever played against an Irelia in lane? It's like that.
It's just completely. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, she just can go anywhere she wants, anytime. And she gets.
The flavor's really perfect.
I really like it.
I really want them to make Blade Surge only get created once per turn. It's absolute nonsense that you get blade surge each attack. I know the flavor.
I love it.
I know the flavor is wrong for not giving her a blade surge every time. But
I have never felt more like I was playing Irelia, except for playing Irelia, than when
that's not true actually for me.
When I attacked and I did 3 combats in 1 turn and I had 3 blade surges into syncopation and my opponent tried to play 3 spells targeting my Irelia and I was just like boing boing boing, like out of combat into combat, dodge a Steel Tempest, out of combat into combat, dodge a Mystic Shot, syncopation, swap my sparring student in for lethal. It was so sick.
I thought you were gonna say like I've never felt it more like than when I played her in League, and I was like no, I can't play her that well in League.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. I'm in silver. So I've got like 1 Irelia clip with more Qs than that before I messed it up and botched my reset on a minion.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I think that regardless, I think that the mirror is really important. Try to find cards that can block. I think Sparring Student, I'm going to stand by. I think Sparring Student's the best card in the mirror. That's my take.
Because the blocks are free. Like, that's the thing about it, is when he's a 3/3, he can block 2 power, and then he just goes back down to 1/1.
The only card that can block. It just like wins you the race. And you do need, like, Sparring Student alone obviously is not going to win you a game. You still need to do the thing. But, like, I feel like when you're doing the thing, Sparring Student is a really big payoff for it.
And he has to chump it. They have to chump it, and we've established that they can't
chump. Yeah, like, if they don't have a Sparring Student and you do, then, like, what are they going to block it with? Like, they have to, like, play Dune Keeper on their turn.
Best case scenario is, exactly, a Dune Keeper Sand Soldier or a Blade Dancer.
Yeah, and both of those aren't very good.
And on your attack turns, it's almost always bigger than theirs because you have Azir triggers and they don't.
Correct.
All else being equal.
Yes.
And you have Irelia Blade Search triggers, so it's like, it's really very, very important.
Outside,
and the deck just doesn't have any removal to kill the random 1/1, so it's just like never dying.
Yeah.
And also the whole coin flip thing with the attack token is that
matters a lot.
Matters a lot because Sparring Student exists.
Yes.
Just its mere existence exacerbates this problem more.
You're so much likely. Another part about that is you're so much likely to have a good attack on 4 than on 3 because like you like just have a dancing droplet or a green glade duo or whatever, and they have a dancing droplet and you play Azir. Like your attacks aren't that good. You get to get in with the Azir to get the trigger, but like
it's not that good. Yeah.
And even if you go Dais into Azir on 3, like your attack still isn't great. Like they just get to put damage on your Azir.
Exactly. Azir's much better at blocking than attacking. You'd rather have your other things block. So I think that having the even attack token is a big deal. How do you? So we've talked about trying to have the even attack token, but obviously you can't control that. So like what are our plans if we do have an odd attack token? Do you think you need to play the game markedly differently, or do you think you still try to race? Like
I think that so I think there's hands where you can try, but I'm coming around more and I don't know the answer, by the way. Like I'm by no means
still feels pretty early to know this.
Still feels very early to know this. I've played tons and tons of games on the deck, and I still feel like I don't feel like I'm good at the deck still.
I think the deck is really hard,
and
I feel like I'm good at it, but maybe that's because I'm like. I have like this great win rate, and maybe that's because I'm hitting good matchups, which is why I feel like I'm good at the deck, is because I just can't fucking lose.
Yeah, maybe.
And anyway, like I don't know the answer definitively, but it feels like I do have to play the game fundamentally differently. It feels like I have to.
I'd be surprised if you didn't.
Yeah, I feels like I have to know exactly when to set up. Like I feel like I need to just play Dune Keepers defensively. And then mitigate as much damage.
Very important defensively,
Yeah, and mitigate as much like turn 4 damage. I feel like turn 4 is the turn I need to survive, and not like. I think what I keep doing is I keep going too hard on turn 3 when I have the attack token, and then my turn 5 can't do much, and their turn 4 has gotten me to 3.
Yeah,
and what a ridiculous statement.
I mean, everything about the deck is so explosive though, because it's so hard. Because if they have, it's so hard to know how you're supposed to play. Because it's like if they have Blade Dance, they could have a Blade Dance thing on any turn, right? Like they could be attacking you at any time. And so if your life total starts to get low, and you're like, okay, well, like,
but they also only have 6 of them, so can you play around them?
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard. Like,
and
it might just be that the person that draws more Blade Dance trigger creatures wins, because like you're all going to draw some of the payoffs, and like maybe that's the thing.
I don't think that's true though, because I've had so many games where I've won because even though they Blade Dance like 3 or 4 more times than me, because their Blade Dances didn't do anything. They just
you have to have at least one payoff. That's a big part of this deck. Is that like if you do not have any copies of Azir or Inspiring Marshal or Irelia, your deck is going to do basically nothing.
Yeah, and they even had like 2 Emperor's Dais or something, but it still wasn't enough because they were still.
And Irelia
1/1s.
isn't even that much of a payoff. Like, I don't consider Irelia a payoff.
I really think Azir
what I'm looking for.
and Marshall are better, but like you do need something to do.
And Dais and Student and Greenglade Duo are all things I would consider payoff before I consider Irelia. Like, she's an enabler.
She becomes a payoff though.
That's fair.
She becomes one of the
But
biggest
like I
payoffs.
said, I've had trouble flipping her, especially because like if you put an attack on the stack and attacks with 4 guys and she's at like 7 or 9, like.
Usually, I have found that frequently on the turn you're flipping Irelia, like you often get to like 11 or 10 with the first attack and then flip her on the second one or whatever, and you really wish you got the Blade Surge, but you didn't. And that happens sometimes, but man, does it really not feel... It's like, man, I wish I got to Blade Surge, and then you handily win the game anyway. Like, that happens a lot.
Another thing I want to say about Blade Surge, I've lost some games with Flipped Irelia because I cast the Blade Surge for value and should have just held it to make it so that they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Blade Surge is insane.
Yeah, when your opponent sees that you have Blade Surge in hand, they look down at their possible
Options can't do them.
and they're 0.
And then they block, and then you cast, and they're like, thank God. And then they like kill, like, Vengeance your sparring student or whatever.
Yeah, especially on the turns where you can like Blade Dance, and then your opponent lines up some kind of bad blocks to play around Blade Surge, and you're just like, okay, and then you do it again, and now you have 2 of them, and it's like, it doesn't, like, there's just nothing you can do. You're dead. Like, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna attack. Okay, block it. Boom. Switch it into this unblocked thing. And it's like, okay, point a removal spell. Switch it into this other unblocked thing. Thanks for Mystic Shotting my 2/2, right? Like, you're my Sand Soldier.
Yeah,
you know?
Another weird thing about playing against this deck is it feels like the most useful trick in your toolbox is clicking OK. Like when they attack you and you have the opportunity to block, you just just click OK, and then you get hit for like 6,
And it's okay.
and that's fine. You can get hit for 6.
Yeah,
and then
like-
they don't get to do anything.
Let the one power
defense is good
blades hit
offense.
you. You can block the Sand Shoulder, but like, don't take a point of toughness off your Azir to block a 1/1 blade, usually, in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's point in
Unless
times where it's free,
it's like
but
a sparring student or whatever. But
yeah, like for the most part, you really don't, like, you can just take the one from the blades every time.
Yeah, because like the thing about that is that
as soon as it's going to be 4.
if you let the damage through, they don't get to do anything.
Yep.
There's no opportunity for them to play cards after that. You click OK and combat's done now.
Yeah, you can't get syncopated.
really
like
good.
if they just like play a Blossoming Blade, attack you for 4, and you're like, deal. Not
Yeah,
getting syncopation.
done. Yeah, you don't
not
get
trying to
to
block with this Azir.
Yeah, you just don't get a chance to Blade Surge Irelia if you just don't block. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. You know?
And it's really messed up when one of the best things to be doing against the aggro deck is
Not block.
smashing that don't block button.
That's true.
I mean, that's only because they're not real attacks, right?
I mean, yes and no. Like the fact that they are real attacks is the reason the deck's good. But yeah,
That's fair. Yeah.
All right. So, do you guys have? I suppose I want to say, like, really quick. I think that in general, some of the best cards in the deck, and like a couple quick tips on like mulliganing. I think Azir's the best card in your deck. I would literally never mulligan him unless I had a second copy. Emperor's Dais is excellent in every matchup where you don't have to block on turn 2. One of the best cards in the deck.
And if you don't have another
block.
way to play, like your other 2-drops don't block well. Like if you don't even have other 2-drops, I would still keep it.
Yeah, a lot of
like
the time
I would keep Azir Dais 1-drop because I don't think that I'm going to draw another. You know what I mean?
I love that hand. I wish
yeah,
I
I'm
ever
obviously
saw
not
that.
mulliganing
I'm talking
hand.
against aggro decks.
For what it's worth, I think if you queue into
into
spiders and you keep Azir Dais 1-drop, you're probably going to lose, and that probably isn't going to work. But
reasonable, like you just have to mull for the Dune Keeper or whatever.
I mean, I would keep the Azir, but like Dais just doesn't do anything in those matchups because you can't race, so they're just not going to block the 1/1 and like.
Or they are going to block just that one. Or whatever.
Yeah, whenever it's free, right? Like, I don't know. I think Dais is one of the best cards in the deck and overperforms incredibly against any deck that is not going to hit you for like 9 on turn 2. But I do really think you have to mulligan it in those matchups. Like, I do not think you can play sparring student into Dais and hope to not block until turn 3 and just be okay. Like, you're going to go
And
to
also
7.
you can't block the open on turn 3 because your student's a 1/1.
Yeah, and then by the time you play Azir, you're like, okay, I have an Azir and a sparring student.
That's a 2/2.
I'm going to block. You have 4 creatures. You just can't catch up. Like you're just never going to be able to catch up. Their creatures are cheaper than yours, have more power, and they have burn to kill you. Like, you're just never going to catch up if that's your plan. I don't think.
Really feels like the only thing that's going to be beating this deck fairly consistently is, like you said, a faster deck. And I think that something I've lost to them a lot is Spiders, actually.
Yeah, I think Spiders crushes Azir Irelia.
Frenzied Skitter just
Deckcode's messed up, dude.
kills you so hard.
You can't, your cards can't block, and they definitely can't block Fearsomes.
I'm pretty sure you just have like, when Frenzied Skitter hits the board, you just have 0 blockers unless you have like a Sparring Student or a Green Glade Duo.
And even then, like, you better be able to make a creature at instant speed or something.
It's awful.
Because usually it puts them below blocking threshold.
And then it's so bad.
So, so let's talk a little bit about what decks are good against.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I want to talk a little bit about the decks and cards that are pretty good against it, and like what I would recommend if you're just sick of it, you don't want to play Azir Irelia, it's not your thing, but you still want to gain some ladder points. My personal recommendation is Thresh Nasus, I think.
Yeah. So I want to talk real quick about the decks that look like they should counter this deck and absolutely do not.
That's an even better place to start. I love it.
Vlad Braum.
Things with Withering Wail in them. That card feels really good when you cast it. It like kills a Green Glade 2/0 and a full Blade Surge trigger. But that's the important card. It trades for an entire play trigger. Whoa!
Yeah, it's
just not like they're just gonna like attack you with the Azir or whatever, and like it. The things that you actually need to kill are not the blades. Like you need to kill Azir.
Correct.
Culling Strike is way better against this deck than Ice Shard is.
Yes, I agree. So that's what I was about. Like, I'm trying to add on the fact that your deck has to be able to kill Azir.
Kill or race Azir.
Kill or race Azir. That's step one. Like,
absolutely.
And it needs to be a good plan, not just a bad one. Thermo Beam it for 5. That's like border. That's like the border. Anything worse than that, no thanks.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And Thermo Beam it for 5 is the only reason that is even remotely acceptable is because the rest of your deck is built to deal with the rest of it.
Invoke a Fallen Comet? Not good enough.
Not going to happen.
Nope, that's 9 mana, man.
Yeah.
The Azir was 3.
3 mana, 1/2 into Falling Comet. You're not going to win that game.
And also, you only get it half the time.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
So another thing, like tough units are good in general against this deck. It just can't be your only plan.
Correct.
That feels like the problem with the Vlad Scargrounds deck is their clock isn't that fast unless they like Vlad you really hard, or have like I won a game in which my opponent had 3 of the 2/3 Crimson guys that were pinging me.
Yeah.
Or no, I lost that game because they had the 3rd like Ice Shard Avalanche effect or whatever. But like it was still like they Ice Sharded me, then they avalanched my like my Dune Keeper Sparring Student Green Glade Duo. Like
I would like to
really avalanched me.
I would like to
still was almost not good enough
to tell you the series of plays that happened in a game I played where I was playing Irelia and queued into Braum Vlad, or I think it was Vlad Sejuani even, but like my opponent played the 2 mana 2/3 on turn 2, then Crimson Curator, the 3 mana 3/3 on turn 3, then 2 more of the 2 mana 2/3 that ping whenever you take damage, right, on turn 4. And on turn 5, they played a Scarmother Virna.
Yeah. Or turn 6, right?
Or turn sorry, so turn 5 was Vlad and then a Scarmother Virna. Regardless, this game ended with my opponent, like one of the best hands my opponent could have possibly had against me. Yeah, right? He even played the 1 mana 1/2 on turn 1.
And not having Scargrounds.
Yeah, he didn't have Scargrounds. But honestly, I think that the creature plan was better than the Scargrounds would have been. So like it was one of the best hands that he probably could have had. And he had like a 24 power Scarmother Viruna and went to like -40 on turn 6. It just wasn't even it was never close. I was just
because the Azir flips. Did you have an inspiring?
There was one turn where I just didn't play like a flawless duet my Irelia made or whatever because I was like, I'm just like, I don't know, this attack like gives my opponent a dude and makes him gain, and like I take one. Like I just won't play it. Like there was one turn. All it took was like one turn where I was like, this flawless duet's bad. And then all of my attacks for the rest of the game were just great. Yeah. Like it wasn't even close.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to try this, I don't recommend doing the Vlad Braum thing. Don't try it. It doesn't work. I've tried it. But if you're going to do it, something I did was I just took out Vlad and put in Swain.
Sounds better.
And it's just been so much better.
Swain, really good against this deck. If you flip a Swain against this deck, they can't block it. We've established they can't block Fearsomes. Like, then it wipes their board. Like really that is good.
Yeah. But
yeah, and then if you ever get to the Leviathan, they can't actually kill you because they can't get attack triggers because they can't attack.
Yeah, you can lock them. You can lock them out with the Leviathan for sure. But usually that's like You can win.
That's the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, if you live till turn 8, you've probably already dealt with all their threats because you'd be dead if you hadn't.
Yeah.
So then you just need anything to win the game.
And
with.
Leviathan
So
does it
take
hard.
your pick. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I think if you're going to do that, do yourself a favor and just drop Swain into the deck. I think Vlad doesn't do
That's
anything.
actually a really good idea with like all of the random Death Lotuses and Avalanches.
really good.
You
Yeah.
flip him super fast, and he doesn't die now to anything because he's tough from the Scar Grounds. He actually gets big because of Scar Grounds.
That's kind of cool.
There's a whole bunch of reasons why I
him,
really
yeah.
enjoyed it, and
I
I
hate
played it from time to time, and don't do it. It's bad.
Your random like Crimson Bloodletter and your like 2/3 that like take damage and ping them are all like
Deck might be good if you take the Scar Gods out of it. That's my take on that deck.
I still don't think so. I think like
I mean, probably still no, but like it might be better.
I don't know. Yeah, just don't do it. But if you're gonna do it, play the version with Swain.
Yeah, the thing about Scargrounds against this deck is like you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna shovel my 1/1s in, and my guys are gonna be tough.
All you
and it's
guys
not
are
gonna be
2,
bad.
and then they're all 2/1s or 3/1s.
Yeah.
And
But then the real thing that
sucks.
happens is you have one creature in play and play the Scargrounds on tree and take like 8, and you're like, oh. Play
I'm
a
already
unit,
dead. Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
like, okay,
Yeah, Blade Dance,
untap,
Blade
kill
Dance,
you,
yeah.
like,
Yeah, it's rough.
yeah, and it's like, oh no, I took some damage from triggers.
Whatever, who cares? And then so those are the things that I think are not good enough. I think that you can't try and spend a bunch of spell mana to kill units. That in general, if your plan is spend spell mana to kill units, I think I'm off it. I don't think you're gonna have
Specifically
a
to
winner
kill
against this
blades.
deck.
Stop killing the blades.
Specifically to kill blades. Yeah,
If you're killing Irelia and Azir,
good.
good.
Keep it up. You need to kill Irelia, Azir, Inspiring Marshal, potentially Emperor's Dais, also Sparring Student, and Green Glade Duo. So you got to kill all the threats, but you need to be efficiently doing it because they're efficiently attacking.
Yeah,
So.
And they're efficiently saving them from the threats. So
Yeah, and that's the other part.
often.
Is like if their plan is to Thermo Beam Azir for 5 and then he gets returned, like you're just gonna emote and scoop, right? Like at least
And
that's
that's
what
the
I
secret
do.
reason the Dancing Droplet's really good is because like the spell mana really matters.
The spell mana matters so much, yeah. So the things that I think are good against this deck is like I've said it before, just attack. I attack or exactly Thresh Nasus. That is the only mid-range deck that I think is actually has
like,
good legs.
you
here.
could like if you want to play as Draven or Azul or Azul Shyvana, it like has a pretty even matchup in this deck. Like go ahead,
Like you can absolutely win
but
the
like
game with
don't
those decks.
expect to be crushing it.
No, I for what it's worth, I just think that you just shouldn't play Ezreal Draven. It's my recommendation. I think that deck sucks, but
Yeah, okay.
I do think it's like
TF Swain. Oh yeah.
also off that. Like,
As
think that
Draven broke. TF Swain.
as Draven is just way too fair right now. I just think that deck is
Braum Swain. Huge brain time. Heard it here first, kids.
Yeah, I do think that if you can attack it, it's good. Thresh Nasus is also good because I think it's the only deck that can deal with the aggressive early draws, and has a good enough plan to beat the like threats. Like you can.
And I haven't answered this question, but I just wanted to like get it
All
out
right,
there.
yeah. So I'm gonna start with Thresh is insane.
He auto flips. They
Thresh-
blade dance once and he's flipped. It's nuts.
Thresh flips automatically every time. So your plan actually can be to race this deck. And I actually think that's why this matchup is good, is because you actually do win the race against this deck because your deck has a lot of early creatures that affect the board. They're really good at attacking. That deck is bad at blocking, and all your things that are really good at attacking early and affecting the board are like 3/2s and 4/3s, like Escaped Abominations, Ravenous Butchers, stuff like
Hunters.
that. Yeah, Bakai Reaper is absurd in the matchup.
Oh, I killed someone with an 11-1 Bakai
First
Reaper the
starts.
other
Like,
day. Whoa.
So I think you actually
I'm bad
win
at
the
it.
race largely because your creatures are slightly bigger, so they can make a couple blocks, and the blocks really help your deck. Also, that's another big part, is that every time you eat
the
something,
slays.
the slay trigger.
Thresh Nasus is about slaying units, and boy, do they just feed meat into the engine.
Yeah,
like you just get to
Nasus on turn
through
6
their
is
slays.
going to be lethal. every
He's
time.
like 10. He's like a 10/10 on turn 6.
He's going to flip on
every
turn.
time.
I've never seen an Nasus that's smaller than a 10 on turn 6 in this matchup. Like
It's
it is
so ridiculous.
huge.
Yeah.
Bakai Reaper is almost completely unbeatable. Like if you don't Homecoming Buckeye Reaper, that card's just gonna kill you,
And it's 1 mana.
and you can't block it.
Yeah, and then they can
Because that's
Vile Feast your
fearsome.
Green Glade duos and like
Yeah, the Buckeye Reaper is insane. Like you can't block fearsome units with your whole deck.
Correct.
The
And that's a
entire
big
deck
problem.
is
except Irelia, which you don't want to be blocking.
yeah, and if you've blocked my fearsome unit with Irelia, congratulations.
Or a
that is
sparring, or like
exactly what I wanted.
Green
or
Glade duo.
sparring.
Great.
That's the only option,
Nice.
right? So I think that, and you can just, you've got your Dune Keepers of your own that you can play and block their aggressive starts with. You can put a lot of creatures into play really fast. Blighted Caretaker's really good. You aren't great at killing Azir. That is the one thing that this deck does have a problem with, is that usually the games you're going to lose are going to be to Azir.
It takes like 2 attacks with a Merciless Hunter, which is like, and then they have all
or
the
like an
bounces.
attack and a Vile Feast, and if they have like a Return Retreat, it gets pretty bad. But like Azir really is like the card that's pretty much the only card that's going to kill you. Azir or Inspiring Marshal if you don't have a plan for like getting there eventually. And sometime I played a game, one of the games I played earlier on Thresh Nasus, I like played Thresh on 5, and then on turn 6 my opponent, or like he played Inspiring Marshal, I played Thresh. Goes to his attack, he's like, all right, Green Glade duo, great, pass. Okay, Blossoming Blade, he had like Azir, Dias, and played Blossoming Blade or whatever. So put 5 things in play, all with 4 power, and then hit me,
Threshes the box,
and then hit me with the Asol emote, the little like finger guns, and then I hit him with the Jinx emote back and dropped Threshes the box, and then he Zillion emoted and scooped. It was so good.
Also, one of the most important parts about playing this deck is emote selection.
Emote selection,
about it for
very
just a
important.
second. The Zillion emote is the perfect. I just recalled the unit you were trying to kill emote.
This was an Austin Yost tweet as well, and
absolutely.
I snap retweeted it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
so good.
You
It's
need
so
to know.
accurate.
You need to know.
Yeah.
So I guess what you really need to know is to follow Austin Yost on Twitter, because you can be learning this for
You can
yourself.
get the deck list and
yesterday.
the emote in the S tier emote game. So, okay. Do you guys have anything else you want to add to this deck? Any last tips, tricks, playing with it, against it, before we move on to our questions for the week?
Another one that looks good, but I think might be bad because the deck isn't great, is Tom Raka.
Yeah, don't play bad decks to beat this deck.
Yeah, like Star Spring, like the Star Spring King does happen very fast when they put all the damage on you with Blade Dances, but like Tom Kench is your real only removal, which means that you're just gonna do the thing where you die.
Yeah, and sometimes they just kill you with Green Glade duos.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, even though Tom Raka is quote unquote a healing deck, it doesn't actually heal your Nexus very well.
True.
So you can
only have
still
that 4
just
mana thing.
die.
Yep.
Really fast. Like
And Homecoming is an insane blowout against that deck, especially if you're doing it with droplets.
yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Okay, let's get into our questions for the week, starting with our question of the week. This one comes from Greg in the Discord. They ask, what card do you think Riot needs to come out with to make Poros a viable archetype? What do you think? We need more Poros, right? There's too many Sand Soldiers floating around.
We need
They're not very cute.
We need more Poros, but they need to be like real creatures. They need to be actual bodies.
I think we need a Poro Lord. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think we have Poro Snacks. Is that not good enough?
No,
No.
we need a creature that makes the Poros bigger.
Yeah, maybe a creature that makes Poro Snacks. Is there one of those?
No. We have Aurora Borealis, which makes...
I cannot believe that's the name of a real card. It just
Which
sounds
is
like
like-
such a Reddit. Like it sounds like a shit post, right?
I know, right? And it's
love
like
it.
Because of that card, I think that like we're actually legitimately like semi close to having a playable Poro deck, because that card does so much. For,
That card is messed up.
yeah, for Poros. Like,
Do you know the text on at the top of your head?
Yeah, I don't know the mana cost off the top of my head, but I believe it's
think it's 6.
Yeah, 6 mana, burst, make 2 Poro Snacks in hand and 2 random Poros.
Card's messed up.
Yeah, it's great, but all the Poros are tiny.
And I think we need.
And Poro Herder's a 4-drop 2/3.
No, it's a 2-drop 2/3
Oh, it's a 2-drop 2/3.
that makes a guy. It used to be a 4-drop 2/3 that drew 2, and now it's a 2-drop 2/3 that draws 1.
Oh, that's
Poro.
okay.
Probably
They
better.
changed it. It was weird. Yeah.
Probably better. But yeah,
Definitely
we
better.
just need a couple Poro, like a couple things that are gonna. We need an Azir for the Poros. We need Poro Azir. Basically, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Oh, also, when I say we need a big Poro unit, no, I do not mean herd of Poros.
Heart of the Fluffed.
Yeah, I don't mean that card.
I heard of Elnux is the card you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Sir, whatever. It's a giant ball of Poros that dies to Hush.
Hush is
beautifully.
so man. It is so sad when you get your Heart of the Fluff hushed.
It's just 8-year board.
It's just so sad.
Yeah, like there have been so many random games and expeditions and some on ladder where I've been like, I can never beat what my opponent has done to me this game. They've got like 6/7/7s with trample in play or overwhelm.
They stack in them snacks.
And then they just play the
heart.
fluff.
Snacks on snacks on snacks on snacks.
And I'm just like, why did you do that? And then I cast Vengeance and emote and they lose.
But they get all their Poros back.
Are they just small
No, they
again?
get a 4/4.
That's it. What? I thought you get all the Poros back.
No, you get a 4/4.
What?
Yeah, I also.
That's it.
Was that really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't break apart. It just dies, and then you get the heart back.
Oh, I thought it gave them all back.
No, the card would be fine if you gave them all back. No.
I thought it was like oh, it gets hushed and then you don't get them all back. But like
Nope.
yeah, but like you just get
You get a 4/4.
oh my god,
Yeah.
that's awful.
Yep.
It's terrible.
I mean, I read that. I guess it's even worse than I thought it was.
no, it's an active downside. Like
Yeah.
you can't play that card, otherwise you lose the game.
Yeah, that's horrid. No, don't play that one. Yeah, I think we need like a 3-mana Poro champion. We needed Braum to be a Poro. Like,
I mean, he does
give Poros plus
make
one
a
plus one
Poro.
or whatever.
He
He makes a Poro, but that's not what I mean. Like, right? Like, you're not like, oh man, the Poro archetype needs an absolute powerhouse champion. Braum, like Braum is just not a powerhouse champion, right? Like in any deck. So like, it needs some good 3-mana aggressive creature that's probably going to make their Poros cheaper and make them bigger or something like that, so that you can really go off.
Yeah, like a 5-drop something. I don't know. Something mid-rangey creature with a decent body.
Yeah, and other Freljord decks need to be bad so that you don't get Avalanche. That's my requirements for Poro being meta. All right. Moving on here, our next question is from Sna and Fobla. They ask, thoughts on Draven Ezreal? I've seen people rate it highly, but rarely see it on ladder. Might just be me, but I don't know. I actually think that I've seen a lot of it on ladder. So
Yeah,
I don't know about
out.
you guys. Like, I feel like I queue into that deck at least once or twice a day.
Let me pull up the win rates real quick.
Deck seems... I don't know how this deck has a 50% win rate, to be honest.
I'm 2-0 against it with Azir Irelia.
This deck is just so fair. I just don't. Can you guys help me here? How does this deck have a 50% win rate?
Because
That's what fair decks do.
Not every... Yeah, that's actually probably the best answer. But like, it doesn't... It can beat other decks.
So here's where I'm at on this deck. It
Draven
feels
gets
like
a lot of axes.
It feels like we've got a plan against the Azir Irelia, and that plan is like block with Draven a lot, and flip my Draven by blocking with it, and then like
Cast some
get a bunch of
removal spells.
axes and cast some removal spells.
Hope you find some victims.
Yeah, and yeah, he's got you can have axes, you need victims, and it's pretty easy actually to execute. Like when that plan goes how you drew it up, you actually usually, I think, beat Azir Irelia. Like if you do the thing you set out to do, you're gonna win. The problem is that I just have no idea how you ever win when you don't do that. Your deck's just full of thermo beams and mystic shots and like Ezreal, and none of this is good against our deck at all, really. And it just has to line up your removal just has to line up so well against their draws. And then in the other matchups, it just feels kind of like an underpowered fair deck. Like I just don't know why you would play this deck instead of Thresh Nasus. I know that it has above a 50% win rate. I just don't know why you would play it. I can't get it. And I even like this deck. Like I've played it in the past and I thought it was really good, but I just don't think it's good right now. So
yeah, I pretty much
I don't know where
agree
you
with
guys
all
are
that.
at.
Yeah, no, that seems like a fair assessment. Like I haven't felt threatened by Draven in such a long time.
Yeah, sometimes you lose to it, but when you lose to it, it doesn't feel like you were like, man, I got slammed that game. It was like, that was a really close game. I had some outs, and then I just like didn't get there.
And then eventually they beat me, and I was like, okay, we got to turn 8, and you dropped your Captain Farron. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's like it just doesn't ever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, help me.
I was watching a streamer play it, and they just like tried to play Farron on 8, and then on 9. Both times I was like, how can you do this? It's all of your mana. You're just gonna die, man.
Exactly. Like what
And
he
did.
Yes, exactly. Like I don't know. people seem to keep winning with this deck, and if it's working for you, then great. Like, tell me the secret.
Yep.
Maybe you need to build it a little differently. But like, man, I played one game of that deck because people told me it was good, and my hand was like Tri-Beam Improbulator, House Spider, Rummage. And like, I just started cackling. I was just like, this is the worst goddamn deck.
Yeah.
Like, then my opponent played like,
the fact that Stun plus
Dune Keeper. I just lost on the spot.
the fact that Stun plus Flock doesn't kill Draven is really egregious.
Yeah, and then like, and then if they don't like, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems with that deck, I think. But I guess it's still winning.
Now play it if it's working for you. Like,
if you like the deck,
wouldn't be crazy putting it in a lineup, but like,
I don't know. I'm giving it a lot of crap here. This is all to say that I think this deck is like tier 2.
Yeah.
Like, like, don't get me wrong. I think the deck is totally fine, and if you want to play it, it's fine. I just think it should have like a 47% win rate instead of like the 52 it does or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I don't think it's awful. All right. Our next question comes from Tede. They ask, will you bring Matron Cythria to the seasonal and climb to rank 1 with it?
sorry, but no. This deck is really cool though.
Really quick, apparently someone in Southeast Asia, some Japanese player got to like really high up in Masters, like top of Masters with this deck. And then Mogwai apparently made a video about it like a couple days ago. And we had this deck in our Discord. I want to know who made this.
It was like day 1, maybe.
Yeah, day 1, some people were talking about it.
Yeah.
They might have found it on Twitter or whatever, but it was cool that
I just want to know where it came from, because if it actually came from us, that would be so cool.
Well, it's not us, regardless. It's going to be somebody in our Discord.
Well, that's us. We're a community.
True. It came from the group,
The collective,
consensus.
the
Yeah,
hive
Hive
mind.
mind, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know who made it because I want to give credit.
If that's
the
that's
deck is
you,
super
let
cool.
us know.
No, this is the deck that tries to matron in Cythria, Lady of Blades.
Lady of Clouds.
Lady of Clouds, yeah.
Yeah, it's like champless, or like sometimes just plays like Elise.
Yeah, I've seen Elise. I've seen
It plays like mobilizes. This deck is wild. I'll post a deck code. I'll probably post a deck code for Azir Irelia and for this deck so that you guys can take a look at it, because there's no way I can ramble off the.
There's
list
also
of
like
cards in this deck.
there's a random Undying plan.
Yeah,
the
and
Undying.
it also has Radiant Guardian in it. It's a real.
The Radiant Guardian makes
deck.
sense because you need to ever beat Azir Irelia, and this deck doesn't beat Azir Irelia, by the way. Like, the Radiant Guardian is neat, but the Undying plan does nothing.
It's a real weird deck.
I just like took an Undying
Sweet,
for 2, and then took an Undying that was 4, and then took an Undying that was 6, and then they died.
All right. Our next question is from Time. They ask, at what point does a deck transition from being good to overpowered?
That's a really good question with this this deck we've been talking about all episode.
I think for me, some of the biggest factors are either an excessive win rate or a very good win rate, like a 53% win rate, but a ridiculous play rate. When you combine those two things, like it can have like a fair win rate, but if its play rate is through the roof, then it's probably also overpowered because
like its win rate is being artificially brought down by a ton of people playing it, a ton of mirrors, and mostly a ton of like when it's that prevalent and then everyone's targeting it, like, which is what is happening with Azir Irelia right now. Like, how many of the lists are on the ladder are either it or being played because they beat it. It doesn't feel particularly healthy.
People are losing games with Azir Irelia to the mirror, to picking up the deck for the first time because everyone is, because it's new, right? Like, nobody had any reps on the deck before 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So there's still new players picking up the deck. The deck is very hard. The entire ladder feels hostile towards it. And with
Still
all
winning.
of these things, it still has above a 50% win rate. There's a lot going against it there, and the fact that it's still above 50 is pretty impressive.
Yep.
For me, I don't know. I'm gonna address less the like straight numbers things and talk a little bit more about the feel, which is maybe the first time Hughes brought up numbers, and I'll talk about game feel.
Yeah,
of all time. But for me, decks usually go from good to overpowered when they feel like you really just have a feeling of power when you're playing a busted deck. Like, everybody knows it. I think if you've ever played a busted deck in any game, you can just feel the like aura of power
when you're
playing.
cackling maniacally.
That's like literally
literal
cackling. Yes,
yes.
yes,
Doing that.
I do
like,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I frequently cackle as I jinx emote people. Anybody who's watched the stream like probably feels it, where it's like, ha ha, this is disgusting. Like,
yeah, when you're like cackling and yelling to yourself in your room by yourself,
your deck is probably busted.
Yeah.
That's when your deck went from good to overpowered.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, really, like, if it feels busted, it probably is, and usually the best ones are like when people are trying to beat your deck and you're still winning. That's usually the one for, because I can cackle with a good deck if it's not broken. Eventually the meta will catch up. When the meta is caught up and you still feel like you like queue into the Radiant Guardian deck 3 times and beat it 3 times or whatever, like the real moment for me with this deck that made me think this deck might be busted was I queued into like Zoe Vi, somebody that was trying to beat me, and just like killed him on turn 5. I was like, that was ridiculous. That deck was supposed to be good against mine. Next game, queued into Thresh Nasus, like killed him on turn 6. You know, like through a Nasus. They like played Nasus on turn 6, and then I attacked 4 times and killed them or whatever. Like, I was like, okay, well, that was ridiculous. Like, maybe this deck's busted. And then I like, you know, queued into some guy who played Radiant Guardian on turn 5. Might have even been turn 4 somehow with like a Mobilize, I think. I like queued into that deck. I'm like, he played like Radiant Guardian with the lifelink and transform, or lifesteal and transform on turn 4, and it still just crushed him. Like, I was like, okay, like that is 3 people who've been trying to beat me. None of them had a chance. Like, this might be too good.
A slight caveat to the when it feels overpowered thing. It needs to feel overpowered consistently.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, if you start cackling maniacally because you're doing dumb things, but you only do it like once every 10 games, that's fine. Your deck's probably actually bad. But if you're doing it every game,
that's a problem.
Yeah.
All right, our next question is from Yost with the most. This is Austin Yost. We mentioned him a couple times during the episode. This is where we got this deck list from initially. He asks, do you think Irelia is as counterable as people think, or will it get better as players learn to play matchups with it?
Yeah, I think it's that one. I think that there are very specific counters. They're going to be good, and they're going to bring you to a pretty favorable win rate. But like, this deck is definitely dominant. Like, TF is dominant in my mind. People thought that deck was counterable. Remember when everyone was playing Anivia?
Yep.
That deck didn't work. That deck didn't get nerfed. That matchup wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Like,
people just figured out that Suit Up was the best card in the deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And like, after that, it was just over. Like, Nivea just had 0 plans to beat Fizz in a Suit Up or whatever. Yeah. I'm not certain we're going to have one of those moments where, like, I feel like we're pretty close to the best version of this deck, but, like, people are going to get much better at playing it, and people are going to get, the best players are going to get even better at playing the hard matchups. Yeah. Now, I also think that people's plan of attacking this deck is currently bad as well, and that might have part to do with it, is that, like, people think that, like, playing the Radiant Guardian plan or whatever, like I said, like, I don't think that plan is good enough. I do think you need a better one. If the meta, I'm not willing to say that I'm not going to call it quite yet. I think the meta needs to adjust a little more because people are going in the wrong direction. And I think it probably will have by maybe next week, by the time we record the episode next.
People are trying to go in the direction of casting Death Lotus instead of the proper direction
of casting Legion Rearguard.
I was going to say casting Frenzied Skitter.
That one too, yeah.
Anything with Fearsome is just so good against this deck. They can't block it.
No, can't block it all. But I also do think that it's going to get harder and harder to beat good players playing this deck over time.
Absolutely.
So, like, I think this deck is almost certainly going to be tier 1 for a long time. I don't think that there's
barring any like catastrophic nerfs.
The meta is currently incredibly hostile to it, and it's still performing well. So that gives me inclination that this deck is going to be here to stay. Yeah. And good players are obviously going to get even better. Like, I mean, we talked earlier about, like, you know, the difference between how you're supposed to play the mirror if you have even or odd attack tokens. Like, I bet that, you know, by the time we're recording our episode for the seasonal, assuming the decks and the metas are similar, like, we're probably going to have that conversation again, and we're probably going to have definitive answers, or like, we're going to have a better idea of how you're supposed to do that by then.
I don't think this deck will remain untouched that long.
And then there's the other opinion where it's just like, you know, I've heard other people are just like, yeah, just nerf it now. Like,
yeah, I think this deck's going to be nerfed soon.
How soon? Do you think, like, the next possible patch?
Yeah, when is that? Is that like, that's like a month from now?
Probably something like that. You think, yeah. All right. Our next question.
I guess it's probably a week from now. Maybe that's too early. I don't think that's too early. I would like to see small adjustments.
Adjustments quickly.
Maybe a 0 to 4 toughness. Like, that would help.
That would help a lot.
That's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Azir to 4 toughness feels like it would help a lot, because then you can start black spearing it.
You can start Ravenous Flocking it.
You can start Merciless Haunting it. Right?
Yep.
There's a lot of 4 damage removal that just doesn't kill Azir right now.
Thermo Beam on 4 versus 5 is actually like a massive difference, because suddenly
play
you're
a
allowed.
2-drop.
Yep, exactly. You get to play a 2-drop.
Big deal. Yeah, you can play House Spider into Thermo Beam on 4, or on Thermo Beam 4/4 on 3 if they play like, Dais into Azir or whatever.
Yep,
like you can actually compete with the board.
Yep.
And also like 4 power creatures. He works at blocking. It just helps a lot.
All right. Well, I guess that brings us straight to our next question from Alex TJA, which asks, if Azir Irelia had to be nerfed, how would you go about it? An Azir health nerf or level up requirement nerf? So, I mean, we already touched on the Azir health nerf.
Maybe the level up requirement should be 12, like Irelia. Like, that's pretty similar. Summoning units and attacking with units. Like, the same unit can attack multiple times.
I really don't want to touch Azir's level up condition, because I already think he's so hard to flip in any other aggro deck.
Yeah.
Like, people are playing these like Azir burn decks, and honestly, I think those Azir burn decks are like way worse than like the Spiders burn decks or whatever. Azir just feels out of place in those decks. Like, he never flips. I don't think he's really that good in any of these burn decks. I do think the rest of the shell is very good, and like, yeah, it's not like Azir is bad or whatever, but like, if those are the other decks Azir is going in, if he's going either into this Irelia deck where he's obviously going to flip like basically no matter what, I don't even really think it matters between 10 and 12.
But what if it was? But what if it was instead he has to see all 10? That would be ridiculously hard.
That would just be impossible, right? Like, he already doesn't really flip in other decks, is kind of the point I'm trying to make. Like, we need to nerf this deck. I feel like Azir's level up number will not really nerf this deck, but will definitely hit him in every other deck. And I don't really think that's necessary. I would rather see his health go down before a unit change.
Yeah, you just said everything I was going to say pretty much. I completely agree on all fronts. He wildly overperforms in this deck and kind of underperforms in everything else.
Yeah, which is rough, because he's the best card in this deck, so he almost has to get touched.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why decks like this...
I feel similarly about Irelia. Like, I don't want her to get like hit with the nerf bat, because like...
She sucks at everything else, right? Like, MF
Irelia, definitely not too good.
Like, that deck is bad, I think.
This is just a problem with... when cards are pushed this hard.
This one feels like a rough one to try and
like,
and attack.
it doesn't feel like any individual card was pushed. It's just like there were the synergy is just so
the
good.
synergies are crazy.
Well, the point of, so normally it's in other games it's been a card that's pushed, but this is
consistently happens.
No, this is just
you're right.
This is
Yeah.
Irelia. Aurelia is pushed.
Yeah,
because these are all Aurelia's cards.
That's true. You're right.
Yeah, that's it. The Aurelia made this deck.
For what it's worth, though, I think that any nerfs within reason that don't target Azir will not really do it. I don't think.
Yeah, I think Azir needs to go to 4.
I think if Azir is untouched, then the deck will remain dominant. Almost pretty much.
If Azir went to 4 health and like a random other card increased by 1 mana, like the 4 drop maybe.
Maybe Blade Surge costs 1 mana now. I
don't think Blade Surge a nerf would matter at all.
Yeah.
That card could not level up, and I don't think the win rate of the deck would be affected that much.
Maybe we make Flawless Duet 2 mana.
Yeah,
sure. That would be a pretty big nerf.
That would be a huge nerf. Irelia would just be bad.
And it would make lead and follow way worse. Like, that one could make sense too. But I really do think that like step 1 for nerfing this deck has to be something about Azir, and I hope it's health instead of other things, but something about Azir, and then probably one other small tweak, like Ribbon Dancer to a 1/1. Honestly, I think might even be enough. Like Azir to 4 health, Ribbon Dancer to a 1/1.
Why Ribbon Dancer to a 1/1? Just because it's like
it can actually eat creatures.
Yeah, because here's why. I mentioned earlier, it's like the only card in the deck that can block.
Early,
even remotely good early. And,
but then we just like polarize the deck more, which I don't really want.
Exactly.
It's hard.
So
this job is really hard.
I don't know. You're gonna make it a little bit easier for decks who's plan to kill Azir to like do it, right? And you're gonna make it a little bit easier for decks who's plan to attack. So I think that those that particular combination might pinch the deck just enough in both directions that it's still gonna execute its plan. And if you weren't gonna be able to beat the plan to begin with, you probably still won't. But it's gonna give you a little bit more of a chance to either kill the Azir or attack through the Ribbon Dancers or whatever. So it's kind of where I land on that one. Our next question is from Tremor192. They ask, what is your procedure to learning the meta? Like, I've played and faced a lot of Thresh Nasus, yet never thought that Thermo on Keeper was correct until I saw a tournament player do it and win off of it. How do you pick up on these weaknesses of decks?
I'm so glad someone mentioned this, because so many times I've been like, shoot your Mystic Shot at that Curse Keeper right now. Everyone calls me a lunatic.
It's good.
It's
Yeah,
good.
it's good.
You've called me a lunatic.
I did the first time.
Yeah.
Why is it good?
It did.
Because they can't. What do you do?
Well, I mean,
You don't get to play a Ravenous Butcher now.
yeah, it was. I think it was better before when Blighted Caretaker, thank you, was like the best card in the deck, and it had insanely swingy turns. And to be honest, like, Cursed Keeper is still ridiculous, but like, actually killing the 1/1 is a really big deal. Like, it means that you don't have a Spirit Leech target as much, you don't have a Ravenous Butcher target, you don't have a Glimpse Beyond the target, you don't have a Blighted Caretaker target a lot. So like, there are absolutely games where you're supposed to Mystic Shot Curse Keeper, but it isn't every game, and it is really hard.
Yes, it is really hard. And circling back to the intent of
Wonderful,
the question,
thank you.
The way you figure stuff like this out is play the deck. Like, that's the best answer, because the moment you play the deck, you suddenly realize what you don't want your opponent to do, and that just tells you what you should be doing when you're playing against the deck next time.
When you have 2 mana up and a recall, and they don't target your thing, even though you're like pretty sure they have it, you're like, thank God, because I want to get value out of this later.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And for example, like, I guess I'm going to use this Curse Keeper example a little bit more. I remember the time when I actually learned this lesson when I was playing scrims against Closing Time Nico. I remember playing games, and I was like, at the end of the game, I was like, I thought about Mystic Shotting your Curse Keeper on like turn 2 or this, like the start of turn 3 or something, like. And then you ended up kind of really wrecking me. Like, would that have been good? And he was like, like, yeah, it would have been. Like, I wouldn't have been able to play Blighted Caretaker. I probably just would have had to play like, like some bad weird Dune Keeper or whatever, and like my turn would have been bad. And I was like, that's really interesting. I'm going to keep an eye out for that. And then we kept playing the same matchup we were testing. I was like, and it wasn't Mystic Shot. That wasn't the exact matchup we were testing. I don't remember exactly, but and then I was like, and then the next game happened, and then I did it, and I was like, you know what? It was good last time. It was supposed to be good last time. I have a similar hand this time. Like, let's try it this time. And then like he like immediately unmuted. He's like, it's good. Like he was like, yeah, it's just like we should be doing this more.
Yeah,
it was like, yeah, exactly. That's all it took. It's like
it makes the hands you get with Thresh Nasus so awkward all of a sudden.
Yeah, but. Regardless from that specific example, I actually think you brought up one of the best ways to learn the new meta in the question, and that is to watch other people play the new meta. Like, people are going to have different ideas than you almost always. Sometimes people are literally never going to think about killing Curse Keeper, right? That makes total sense to me. It's easy to miss that, right? If you never once killed a Curse Keeper last season before it got its death trigger, like, you probably could have at some point and it would have been good, right? But it's easy to just never do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, watching people play when you aren't playing is a really good way to learn new metas. And also, just talking to people, like, usually is the best way to do it, I think.
That specific example, I'm like thinking back to games I've lost where I'm like, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Like TLC, like I should have just avalanched both Curse Keepers.
Yeah. You frequently
like
should.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Because instead, wild.
Yep. Game's really hard, so
yeah,
I really wouldn't blame anyone for missing that. And the other part about it is that, like, sometimes it is bad to do that. So like,
yeah, it's not always good. Do not always snap off 3 mana. Don't snap off 3 mana Thermo.
please do not always spend 3 mana on Cursed Keeper thermogenic feeding it.
We're like, wow, I'm playing these Cursed Keeper decks, and it's just a 2 mana 4/3. It gets a card on my opponent's
so good.
insane.
Yeah. All right, our next question is from Dragon. They ask, is Irelia the savior Ionia needed, or has she become the very thing she was meant to destroy?
That is a very good question.
This is a really well phrased. What do you think? What do you think, Hugh?
Irelia didn't. I don't think she like saved Ionia. The Ionia is. I want the region to be good. I don't want Irelia to be the
good.
only.
Yeah, you don't want the card to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Ionia's is not good now. Irelia is just good.
Ionia is kind of like one of those regions that's just like a Ionia, which is kind of fittingly because it has Lulu. It's just a good support. Like it is the support region. Like like
not mechanic,
not the mechanic,
but
it was good in Fiora Shen because the deck wanted like literal Deny and Shen and River Shaper. Like it's good now because all of these Blade Dance cards are nuts with other cards. Like the Blade Dance package by itself is not not good.
Yeah,
it's not going to win you games. Like if you just played mono Ionia, no. Yeah,
I
Elusives is the last time I thought this region was good.
Yeah, I would not pick the Ribbon Dancer Blossoming Blade package in Expedition. Like those cards just probably aren't that good there, right? Like it really is exploiting powerful synergies,
which is cool.
Which is really cool.
Basically, the tagline for Ionia is and has been for a very long time: garbage region, good cards.
Yep.
Yeah, but there was a while there where it was the best region because it had Shadow Assassin and Karma and stuff, and they had to nerf it multiple times and like.
Yeah, but those were just because they had a few too many good cards. It was never actually really a good region as a whole.
That's what a good region is like good cards. Like the decks were half Ionia cards and they were very good.
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, also the power level was just way lower. So like that's the bar for a good card was just much lower. Like even just Shadow Assassin as a 2/2 or whatever. Like right now, Shadow Assassin is not a good card, right? Like
it's a 2/1. It's not that much worse.
It's not really that much worse. It's not very good. I don't think it would be playable if it was a 2/2 either.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
It used to be like probably the best card in the game.
I think it would be good again, but I don't think it would.
I still don't think it would see play as a 2/2
mana.
I mean, I think that people would put it in decks, but it would be like a 1 or 2 of in some decks.
I think it could be
as a 2/2.
I think it could be vaguely defensible as a 2/2 in actually weirdly enough Azir Irelia because it's the only deck I can think of that plays 3 copies of Retreat.
Yeah, but like
just do that.
That's just not even the
better.
plan. Yeah, exactly. Like we can do that with Droplet and it's better. Like these fair decks that would just like there just aren't decks that are like I want to spend 3 mana for a 2/2 elusive and draw a card. Like that's just not any deck's plan anymore.
Yeah, Zap Sprayfin isn't even good anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like we aren't even playing Zap Sprayfin. Like I just don't think Shadow Assassin would be good. So it's kind of just like a combination of it got nerfed. Ionia got nerfed when the power level was too low. The power level kept climbing and the cards never really caught back up. And now we're getting these new cards that are breaking synergies. I'm going with Irelia's become the thing she meant to destroy. She seek to destroy.
Yeah.
She's the monster and she's going to be the next batch of hilariously bad Ionia cards in 6 months. When she gets nerfed and then all of the Ionia cards are bad again. And then we're going to be like, lol, remember those like 2 months where we played nothing but Ionia Shurima and now they're all bad again. Like,
yeah, because also the problem with her is that like the moment this deck stops existing, her entire package is bad.
Yeah, it's really
that's the problem. Like that's the problem I have.
Unless
with
you're doing it with MF, which is worse.
That's
but like
the problem I have with this whole
too.
like this whole block of cards that we got. The Blade Dance stuff.
I do like Syncopation.
The
Syncopation is sweet.
Syncopation's sweet, but like that's
they better not touch that card. That's for sure.
It's just
that card is not even close to the problem.
No,
all the Blade Dance
5 steps removed from the problem.
Yeah, all the Blade Dance stuff. Like, what do you do with that out of this deck now? Like, it doesn't do anything anymore.
I mean, it's still the answer is like still Sparring Student, but that might be the card that gets nerfed. Yeah.
All right. So back to a similar vein with Azir. This one's from Keon Spy. Azir is now really easy to level up. Should it be nerfed a bit to maybe summon 12, 13, 14 units or even more? I think if you're going to address the Azir unit summon problem, it needs to be like at least 13 or more before I think that nerf is going to be relevant.
I think 12. I think you'd notice 12.
I think you'd notice it, but I don't think it would affect that many games.
I think if all it needs to do is delay the average level up by a turn.
Think about how many...
I think you need 13 for that. It's kind of where I'm at.
I have a lot of attacks with Azir that... But the thing is, Azir's impactful as soon as he levels up. So, like, if you do it 2, it is always 2 less power in this deck, right?
It is.
So, like, and if you're barely killing them, like, that does matter. Or if you're barely winning races... I'm not usually barely winning races.
Yeah, usually you overkill them by like 40. So like it really, I feel like it really
not
needs
quite that, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I feel like it really needs to take like a whole turn off. And like I feel like you can consistently level up Azir on turn 4 in the deck. Like I think leveling up Azir on turn 4 is currently nearly trivial. I think at 12 it would still happen, but would most of the time happen on turn 5.
And even when it did happen on turn 4, it would have less of an effect on that turn.
At like 13
pumping less units.
At 13 or 14, I think you're approaching the point where you're going to get basically an entire extra attack. You're going to need an entire extra card, Blade Dance trigger or an attack token or something to get the flip. Because like with just 2, like I mean, if you have Emperor's Dais Azir, like any attack token is getting you two things immediately. Like
That's fair.
it feels like most of the time you're flipping Azir is like my 2 blades go into play, 1 Sand Soldier, my Azir flips, then the Emperor's Dias Sand Soldier like gets pumped or whatever. Like that happens a lot.
And we've talked about why we think this is just a bad idea for a nerf in general.
Yeah. But
because it tanks it so hard, and like the decks is trying to play 1 drop, 2 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop, Azir attack.
yeah, you're just never gonna flip. You just like literally won't draw enough cards to be able to play 14 units in a game.
You're gonna
unless
kill them
trying to
before it
cheat
flips.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would need to go to like 13 or 14 in order to have a meaningful impact, and to do that would just be awful on the other decks that are trying to play Azir in a more reasonable way. So I
absolutely.
hope they don't do that. All right. Our next question is the run back from Yost with the most. He asks, is Zillion the new S tier emote? It is such a good combo with Blade Surge and Syncopation.
Totally. Agreed.
100% agree. If you aren't using the Zillion emote to go with your recalls when you're playing Azir Irelia, it's a huge miss.
It's also a huge, like a weird, like kind of not BM way to respond to the Shen emote when you lose.
Yeah, it just replaces the Shen emote, which is awesome.
That's what I'm. Yeah,
So,
I think
so it just slots for free into your lineup.
Yeah, because you don't you use the Zillion emote whenever you lose the good game thing, and whenever you win, you can just pick your favorite emote. There's
Yeah,
the
you
Garen
can.
emote with
Sure.
the cup hat. Yeah,
you Garen emote.
The Garen emote is what I was going to suggest. That one, that or Jinx.
Yeah,
I accept
Nico
Jinx
was
in
telling
every
me the other day
situation.
to play MF because it's a good greeting emote and has BM potential, and I was like, Garen, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Like,
Garen
come on.
emote hits way better for that.
I just bought MF too because I trusted him. What a fool.
You're a huge whale. All right. And our last question of the day comes from Horstronaut. They ask, what would you recommend to someone who wants to get better at visualizing and analyzing different lines of play?
This is a great question.
Excellent question. So visualizing, I'm going to let one of you guys take visualizing. I'll come back on analyzing plays.
So for visualizing, I would say that a little practice thing you can do is any like really complex board state or like really complex or pivotal moment in a game where you're like, oh God, there's like 3 different things I could do. I know what they are, but I have no idea how any of them will end up. I don't know which one's right. Take a screenshot of it and like take a
Such a good advice.
quick note of what was happening, because I promise you, if it's complicated enough, you'll forget what the circumstances were, and you'll miss some relevant details. You'll come back and you're like, oh God.
Even just having the picture, you probably don't even need, like, a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you look at a picture of a game state, you'll remember the game very well.
You will, but like there are plenty of times where you like forget a key detail.
Yeah,
But
for
anyway,
sure.
Take the
more-
screenshot and then do whatever you're gonna do. Try your best, try and win the game, whatever. Come back to it later when you've gotten like 2 or 3 of these things, or immediately if you want. But come back to it later and be like, okay, try and remember what happened in the game. It's usually pretty easy to remember what ended up happening. And then try and figure out what you should have done instead. And then take that knowledge into future games. And the moment you start consistently thinking about all of these lines, they'll get more and more ingrained in your memory, and you'll be able to think through them faster. Because the hardest part about visualizing a play in the future is not having done it yet.
Yeah.
Once you've done it even once,
Your brain will recall it.
Exactly.
You got to build those synapses.
Yeah. And once you've done it once, you'll be able to think through it way faster. And once you can think through it faster, you can start thinking through more.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's at this point I can think on a play like, okay, I'm gonna play this. If they play Avalanche or Ice Shard, which one's better? Which line is better for me to take? Okay, and then kind of like be able to talk through like, oh well, they don't have this because they would have played it last turn. Like I just knew my opponent didn't have Shapestone because I was like, oh, I didn't play around Shapestone. Oh, they didn't cast it. Guess they don't have it. By the way, Shapestone got me like 3 times today on stream because I was like, well, the good version doesn't play Shapestone, and then I like died, and I was like, okay,
People keep playing the bad version.
yeah.
I think the bad version is more. I think the like Shapestone version is more popular than the Green Glade Duo version. If I was to guess, just from what I've seen.
From what I've seen too.
I've seen a lot of Shapestones in Ancient Preps, and I've I don't think I've ever seen Navori Conspirator in play. So maybe people agree that card's bad.
I think that one got pretty sussed out pretty fast.
I also got like wrecked by Nopify in the mirror, and I was like, this card isn't good. But he just like countered a Blade Surge, and I was like, I don't have lethal
it's
anymore.
Pretty good against Flawless Duet, to be honest. Like that's like the best target for Nopify.
Is Flawless Duet the 1 mana one?
Yeah.
Oh, Blade Surge is the thing she makes.
Irelia thing, yeah. And then I was gonna say, so that screenshot advice is such good advice. Honestly, if you just take those screenshots, just put them in the Discord. If you're a member of the Champ Select Discord, you can just take a screenshot of a hard spot and slap it in the Discord, and there'll probably be 5 or 6 great players and like pretty much around almost whenever who are gonna like look at the board state and tell you what they would have done and why. And like
we should do that. We should make like a what's the play.
I was literally about to say like I just had a great idea to like I almost want to make a whole channel where people just like post their hard screenshots of like what the line was at this point and have people talk about it. So like straight up, if you ever want to post a screenshot in the Discord or whatever and have a conversation about what people think the line was, please do that. I think it'd be really interesting. And if you don't do it in the Discord, right, like you can just do it with yourself. As far as analyzing lines, when you visualize a new line, the first question I ask myself is like, usually when you find a new line, it's cute in some way, right? Like it's non-traditional, it's cute some way, because most players have been playing long enough that they've seen the traditional lines, there's nothing cute about should I vengeance this Nasus, right? It's like, well, we got to play around atrocity, like maybe we can do it here or not. But like oftentimes you're like, ooh, I'm going to play my Greenglade duo after I've attacked the first time so that my opponent, will
use their ice shard
first or whatever, right? Like usually there's some lines that have a little bit of trickiness to it, where they're like prodding your opponent into making a mistake, or they're like trying to get the opponents to you're playing around something in some way, right? The first thing is like, is this even good? Like, a lot of the times you come up with these cute lines and you're just like, I'm just going to waste 3 mana. And like, even if they have all these things, I'm not really playing around it that well anyway. I'm not sure I can win anyways. A lot of the time, like your cute lines are like, yeah, I can play around Ice Shard, but if they have it, I'm still going to lose. So whatever, I'm just going to make them have it, So is your line good or is it just too cute? That's often a hard question because the line is really blurry and fuzzy. And, it comes down a lot to judgment of whether or not you think it's good enough. But that's my first go-to. Is this even good? Followed quickly by how does this go poorly for me?
Yeah.
And usually when you're taking lines to play around certain cards, you are going to play into other ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of the time.
You're like, oh, found a sick line to dodge,
Avalanche.
And then you're like, oh, walked right into Withering Well.
Or Blighted Ravine or whatever, right?
Yeah. Blighted Ravine's a big one.
So like, you can find lines that dodge cards, but sometimes you just walk harder into other cards that they're just as likely to have. So make sure you're trying to avoid that. Obviously, it's hard to give specific examples because these are new lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think if you're having trouble finding good lines just in general, like if you feel like you're just like struggling to make consistently good plays on average, then I think you should highly recommend just like watching good players. There's streams 24 hours a day on Twitch of Masters players, right? Like we've been streaming 6 days a week at twitch.tv/ChampSelectPodcast.
Not always the same 6 days, but always 6 days.
6 days a week at twitch.tv/ChampSelectPodcast. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can. But yeah, I highly recommend watching good players as well as another way to find great lines. Like we talked about that thermogenic beam on Curse Keeper earlier.
Yeah,
like
huge.
That's probably a line that I would argue 95% of the player base would never take. And just watching a great player do it once or whatever is enough to build those synapses to potentially
get
do it
you
in
thinking
the future.
about it the first time.
Yeah, or get you to do it. That can win you a game. Yep. It's just that easy. 20 LP, baby. Just like that. All right. And with that, I think that we're coming to an end to this week's episode. Do you guys have any closing statements?
Nope. Just that I'm going to keep playing Azir Irelia while I can. Or maybe Thresh Nasus. Thresh Nasus feels like it's really well positioned right now because it has a best matchup against the best deck, and it's just really good.
And it's the best, it's the best deck that also has a good Azir Irelia matchup.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that too because I just don't really like playing Azir Irelia that much.
Yeah, or I'd recommend Spiders. That's my other recommendation. If you're really trying to,
someone was in my stream and they were like,
people. Yeah.
Someone was in my stream like, yeah, I can't play Azir Irelia. I only have Spiders, Threshnasus, and Lysandre built. And I was like, perfect!
Yeah, great.
Not the Lysandre one, but the other two.
Delete that one,
Great.
delete that deck, but
absolutely.
the other two are going to be really good. Okay, so thank you everybody for listening to this episode of Champ Select. We've been streaming, like I said, 6 days a week, twitch.tv/Champ Select Podcast. Be sure to check that out. We just hit affiliate, so we're probably going to be up and running. We'll have our subs up and hopefully pretty soon. So thank you to everybody who's been following. If you aren't a member of our Discord, you got to join our Discord. It's the best possible place you can be if you want to be a competitive Legends of Runeterra player. Links for all that will be in the description to wherever you're listening to this episode on. And without further ado, we will see you all next week on Champ Select.